The shocking double homicide that rocked a prestigious Beverly Hills neighborhood shattered a family, but also ignited one of the most infamous trials in American history. Brothers Erik and Lyle Menendez were convicted of murdering their parents in a trial that drew public attention nationwide. To some, these young men were greedy and cold-blooded killers, willing to mercilessly execute their parents to take their father's fortune for themselves. To others, Erik and Lyle's story was much more heartbreaking. Two brothers that finally snapped after decades of abuse. Their case has drawn increased interest in recent years thanks to both documentaries and recent updates that might change the narrative completely. On today's episode, we will cover the most recent news in the Menendez brothers' case, bringing you the latest updates on a story that's been closely followed for decades. Over 3 decades have passed since the night in 1989 that changed the Menendez family forever. Inside their Beverly Hills home, José and Kitty Menendez were brutally murdered. After a shocking recorded confession made its way to police, Erik and Lyle Menendez were arrested for the double homicide of their parents. By the time their trial concluded in 1996, the brothers were sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. For many years, the case appeared to be closed, but the story remained in the public eye. Recently, the resounding calls for justice on behalf of the Menendez brothers have helped push officials to re-examine the case. The fate of Lyle and Erik Menendez now hangs in the balance, and once again, the Menendez brothers' case is making headlines. Will they remain in prison, forced to miss the rest of their lives? Or will they be given leniency and a chance at true redemption? Soon, we might have an answer. Growing up in Beverly Hills in the 1970s, it seemed like Erik and Lyle Menendez had it all. Their father, José, had amassed a small fortune thanks to his success as a film executive. The Menendez family lived a life of luxury to the outside world, but inside the walls of their lavish mansion, things were not quite so perfect. According to later testimonies, José was controlling and frequently abusive, and their mother Kitty did nothing to defend her sons. On August 20th, 1989, José and Kitty Menendez were found dead in their home. Both had suffered multiple gunshot wounds, and Kitty showed signs of additional injuries done post-mortem. Lyle and Erik, then 21 and 18, claimed they had returned home and found their parents dead. They seemed to blame an unknown intruder, suggesting their family had been targeted due to their obvious wealth. While authorities searched for leads, the brothers got a head start on spending their inheritance, dropping significant sums on shopping sprees and extravagant vacations. While this cast a shadow of suspicion on Erik and Lyle, it was not substantial enough to merit a conviction. Then, months after the murders, police received a bombshell confession from an unlikely source. After his parents' death, Erik had been having regular sessions with psychologist Dr. Jerome Oziel. Eventually, the guilt became too much for Erik to bear, and he confessed to Dr. Oziel that he and Lyle had killed their parents. This confession was protected by Erik's patient status, and as such, it was not turned over to the authorities. Unfortunately for Erik, Dr. Oziel had some skeletons in his closet as well, namely, a jealous mistress that had been secretly taping his sessions with clients. Dr. Oziel presumably did something to upset her, and shortly thereafter, she released the recording of Erik's confession. Now that police had a recorded confession, Erik and Lyle were arrested in March of 1990. The Menendez brothers' trial began in 1993 in what would become a televised and highly sensationalized legal proceeding. This initial trial yielded no verdict, as the prosecution and defense presented two very different stories. The prosecution painted Erik and Lyle as greed-driven monsters, spurred to unthinkable violence by the allure of their parents' fortune. The defense countered with the tragic tale of two abuse victims who had finally snapped after years of suffering. The jury couldn't come to a decision as to which side was more compelling. In 1996, the Menendez brothers were tried again, once more drawing the eyes of the nation as onlookers awaited the final verdict. The presiding judge made a definitive ruling which crippled the case being made by the defense team. The extent to which claims of prior abuse could be used was severely restricted. As a result, the prosecution managed to convince the jury that the Menendez brothers were guilty of first-degree murder. Erik and Lyle were sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Since being incarcerated at California's Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility, the brothers have been model inmates. They have attempted to file for multiple appeals, but year after year, they have remained trapped behind bars. Yet, a recent resurgence in public interest and attention from state officials has renewed hope for those who believe the Menendez brothers deserve a second chance. In 2024, Netflix released a documentary covering the full story of the Menendez brothers, sparking widespread public interest in the case. This led to an outpouring of demands for justice and a retrial that flooded social media. Former LA County District Attorney George Gascon filed a petition for a retrial, but 2024 District Attorney-elect Nathan Hochman made it clear that he would have that petition withdrawn immediately after taking office. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has expressed his support for a re-examination of the case. In the past year, the defense team for the Menendez brothers has come forward with new evidence that they believe would have changed the outcome of the trial. Despite this, Nathan Hochman stated in February of 2025 that he would oppose any attempt at a retrial, even in light of this new evidence. On May 13, 2025, Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Michael Jessic granted the Menendez brothers the hearing they had so desperately hoped for. Family members came forward to testify on behalf of the brothers, insisting they had made every effort to turn their lives around and deserved leniency. Judge Jessic received an impressive number of petitions from correctional officials that had worked with the Menendez brothers in prison. According to the judge's own statements, he was shocked by the number of letters he'd received. Each of these letters expressed their support for Erik and Lyle's sentence being reduced, testifying to their exemplary behavior in prison and their hard work to get their lives back on track despite their circumstances. The Menendez brothers themselves attended the hearing via video call. They were somber and apologetic, condemning their past actions as criminal, selfish, and cowardly. Erik said they had been working hard on earning their redemption, and that no matter what, they will, quote, not stop trying to make a difference. All the testimonies and petitions swayed Judge Jessic, who ruled in favor of increased leniency and a second chance. Judge Jessic acknowledged the horrific crime, but also stated he believes they have done enough over the past 35 years to get a chance at redemption. In this resentencing, the Menendez brothers' previous sentence of life in prison without possibility of parole was reduced to 50 years to life. Because Lyle and Erik were so young when the crime was committed, under California's youthful offender law, this new sentence made them eligible for parole. The brothers were scheduled to appear before the state's parole board in August of 2025. If parole was granted at these hearings, the only thing standing between the Menendez brothers and freedom would be a signature from Governor Newsom, who has been very vocally supportive of the retrial and resentencing efforts. Finally, after more than 3 decades, those who wanted the Menendez brothers to have a second chance at life rejoiced. Freedom was closer than it had ever been before. Leading up to the parole hearings, both brothers filed petitions for habeas corpus in light of the new evidence brought by the defense. These filings could grant the brothers a retrial, in which this new evidence would be heard before a judge and jury. It's unclear what new evidence the defense has, but one piece of that evidence is said to be a letter from Erik written to his cousin Andy Kano back in the 1980s, in which Erik describes the abuse he had been suffering at the hands of his father. Nathan Hochman continues to oppose these efforts, calling the brothers' attempt at a retrial a, quote, Hail Mary, and remaining firm in his position that the convictions must stand. On August 21st and August 22nd, 2025, the Menendez brothers appeared individually before California's State Parole Board. The proceedings were closed to the public, with those who have followed the case eagerly waiting for updates. Erik's parole hearing was held first, with Lyle's held the following day. In a twist upsetting to many, both brothers were denied parole. The denial was based on a number of factors, citing former rule violations in prison that included illegal phone use, computer misuse, and other issues. Erik's hearing also brought up his prior burglaries that occurred before the murders, while Lyle's hearing noted his issues with deception and minimization despite an outwardly remorseful attitude. Commissioners present for the hearings did acknowledge former rule violations by the brothers, but also highlighted their efforts at rehabilitation and helping other inmates. The hearings brought out raw and brutal testimonies from both brothers. Erik told the commissioners about a conversation he had with Lyle 5 days prior to the murders, in which Erik confessed to Lyle that he was being sexually abused by their father. They agreed to buy guns to protect themselves, feeling their already dangerous situation would soon become more dangerous. Erik was asked why he didn't flee or go to the police, to which he responded that he felt he truly believed there was no escape at the time. Erik said that on the night of the murders, he and Lyle felt this was a now or never moment. Erik knew his dad was coming to sexually assault him, and they believed if they let their father make it out of the den, they'd be dead. Both brothers insisted they had not premeditated this, and instead were acting on instinct in a desperate effort to protect themselves. They also both testified that they felt betrayed by their mother, who knew of the abuse and did not protect them, but that she was not the object of their rage. Erik plainly stated that if she had not been in the same room as their father, the story might have ended differently, while Lyle expressed his love of their mother and his reflection on how afraid she might have been too. Despite these heartbreaking testimonies and all the support shown for the pair being paroled, the State Parole Board denied the opportunity for both. Erik and Lyle can apply for parole again in 3 years, a waiting period which could potentially be shortened to 18 months for good behavior in prison. Their petitions for retrial are still pending. There is also another path to potential freedom. At any point, Governor Newsom can step in and grant the brothers clemency, which can reduce their sentence or effectively pardon them completely. Despite Newsom's personal opinions, it's a delicate balance to strike. Other state officials, like Nathan Hochman, have made it clear that they will fight against any such effort. For now, the Menendez brothers' future hangs in the balance, but the reduction of their sentence has opened doors that have been tightly shut for the past 35 years. More than 3 decades after their parents' murders, Erik and Lyle Menendez stand closer to freedom than they've ever been since their guilty verdict was delivered. For some, this is justice long overdue, a recognition of the abuse they endured and their dedication to redemption that deserves leniency. For others, this is a mockery of the justice system, as 2 guilty, cold-blooded killers attempt to weasel their way out of the consequences of their actions. No matter which side you fall on, there is one thing on which we can all agree. The Menendez brothers' story is not yet finished. The bids for retrial and possibility of future parole will continue to draw attention in the coming months. As the world waits to see what will happen, this case remains as a chilling reminder of how razor-thin the line between monster and victim can be at times, and the story of the Menendez brothers shall remain as yet another tale from the underworld.
If you enjoyed this true crime story, don't forget to like and subscribe and let us know what you think in the comments. Want to watch another chilling tale from the underworld? Check out these other videos on screen.